All right, everybody. You know what? This might be the last one for convention, right? Because we have one scheduled for that Wednesday right before convention. So yeah, the last legislative and PAC telecon before our national convention. Don't have anything too super, no earth-shattering news. There is some news on the WEP GPO front with a new bill. We sent that information out. 82 HR 82 is up to 288 sponsors, 199 Democrats and 89 Republicans. So a couple away from where we can at least start forcing votes, or at least talking about forcing votes. The Senate side is pretty much the same as it was last month. 44 total co-sponsors, five Republicans. So we still need 5 Republicans there. 6 to get 60, and at least 5 of them to be Republicans. So, Brian, do you want to talk about 4260, Richie Neal's bill, and the differences between, and what our message is?
Yeah, thanks, Edmund, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time yet again this month to speak with us. Richie Neal's bill is a WEP-only repeal, and it's a repeal and reform. So there has been concerns raised by some stakeholders in the WEP family that a straight repeal might lead some participants to see a reduction in benefits somehow. So Mr. Neal's bill contains a hold harmless clause. It has a sunset, I think, in the year like 2058 or something like that now, where the old policy would go back into place. That's a scoring decision. But the thought is, at that point in time, anybody impacted will have probably moved through the system and be on the other side of sort of the basketball and the snake. Those are the two main differences. Mr. Neal has been able to get every Democrat on the Ways and Means Committee to join his bill, which are, most of the ones who we don't have on HR 82 of the Democrats.
Yeah, there's 97, all Democrats, right?
Yeah, all Democrats. I think there is a Republican on Neal's bill. It is technically bipartisan. I think Brian Fitzpatrick has consistently been on all of the bills. Our positioning on this legislation is that UPMA supports this legislation. It is absolutely an improvement over the status quo for a significant number of our members, but obviously it leaves something to be desired, because we will still need to work with Congress to deal with the GPO individuals who are impacted. But we would absolutely like to see this legislation passed, or as a means to a compromise, with the supporters of HR 82. If there's a way to combine both, so both pieces of the policy are dealt with in a fair and an equitable way, we'd be very happy with that outcome. It's good to see that he's consistently supporting this issue on our behalf. Mr. Neal has long been a supporter of this issue. He did, move the WEP bill out of the Ways and Means Committee last Congress. He doesn't have that power in this Congress. The Republicans in the House hold that power. Still haven't seen a plan from Chairman Smith at the Ways and Means Committee yet, but I do know discussions are happening amongst his staff. I will say that amongst the things that have been prioritized by Chairman Smith, He has spent a lot of time organizing and getting an individual and small business tax plan put together. That is sort of the framework of the Republican tax agenda when it comes to other issues like trade and pensions. He has not put his attention on those issues yet. Very hopeful that he will come out with a position on the issue, before the end of the year, and then we'd have a basis to work in a bipartisan way with members of the Ways and Means Committee and the full House and Senate.
So last year it's a similar bill. Is it identical to the one that Richie Neal introduced last Congress?
Almost exactly identical. They change a few of the dates in the bill, so technical corrections and things like that, but virtually otherwise the same.
So the upshot of it was last year pretty much was that there was competing bills and Mr. Neal was the chairman, right? So it's a different dynamic with Mr. Smith being the chair. Does that help? Is it? I mean, is it a neutral? Is it something we should pay attention to? It's just it just is what it is.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think the best thing to have is a bipartisan bill, and ultimately, if this helps to get Chairman Smith to a place where he can negotiate a compromise and a consensus on this issue, that would be great. I think there's going to continue to be challenges based on fiscal cost. This Republican majority in the House is not enthusiastic about spending money and increasing the deficit. That has been one of the things that they have pretty consistently and across the board held true to. So this will be tough because there is a budgetary impact, and it is
significant.
Scored as government spending.
Correct.
Whether that is fundamentally true and fair is irrelevant because the scorekeepers will call it as such.
Did we ever get to a score? I don't think we ever got to a CBO score, did we?
There was a CBO score last year. Every year it keeps going down, but it's still in the billions,
right?
Significant billions of dollars.
Okay. And it's an expansion. I think the money is one thing. It's obviously important. It's also seen as an expansion. Somehow it's an expansion of Social Security, which it isn't really that either.
No.
It's not a handout. It's something that people paid into and earned and qualified for just by virtue of their public service. They just don't have access to. So
correct.
So that's the upshot of that. So does anybody have any questions or comments or anything about where we are with Web GPO and what we should be doing? I guess we should touch on timetables on what we have. Obviously it's July. They're all here. I'm getting calls and texts, and they're here. They're in town currently, but they'll be going for August. What does the legislative timetable look? Obviously, they're going to start running for election here pretty soon too. What and then some of this is obviously going to be a feeling. It's hard to put you too much on the spot here, but what do you think a timetable is for us, and what we should be looking at for action on this?
I think just thinking about this in steps, we want to be in a position where, hopefully by the start of the new fiscal year, October 1st, we're in that 290 plus co-sponsor range for HR 82. I think if we have legislative text from Chairman Smith at that point, that would be a very pleasant development. I don't expect that, but it would be a pleasant development. And the real reality of it is we have to just keep adding co-sponsors and keep adding pressure to force Congress to try and deal with this issue and use those mechanisms to force the issue. There is real reluctance to deal with it without that pressure.
Okay. And August recess back in September.
I think they're going to be here in Washington for after Labor Day, pretty much 2 to 3 weeks a month until the end of the year.
And and they pushed.
They'll take breaks around Thanksgiving,
right.
Columbus Day, and things like that. But they'll pretty much be in Washington. They're going to have to deal with the defense bill, the budgets. There's already people talking about how do we make sure there's not a government shutdown.
Right. That was going to be my next question. So, yeah, I mean, they pushed the debt ceiling. I think is going to be probably till the end of next year, right? But
not until after the next presidential election.
Right. So how does the shutdown work? What's the mechanism there? So
the budget resolution, the debt ceiling deal set overall budget levels for fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. That deal includes some provisions that would make a CR a little bit easier to pass by Congress, although it's still going to be pretty tricky in the House to pass a CR. And there's a question as to how that will work, just the mechanics politically for McCarthy. But hopefully I expect a CR to be passed to keep the government open as of October 1st. Speaker McCarthy wants to pass all 12 of the appropriations bills. He's got a lot of work to do to accomplish that objective. And then they have to reconcile their funding levels with the Senate's funding levels. And even though they agreed on budget levels, though the numbers do not line up between the House and the Senate. They're very far apart. From everything from defense spending to healthcare spending to Homeland Security spending, you name it, they are very far apart, even though they agreed to a budget just a few months ago. Realistically, getting the government funded with all 12 bills is a Christmas deadline because on January 1st, the budget cap for spending decreases by 1% across the board. So that would be everything in the discretionary budget. And that would be a lot of pain and very difficult to overcome, a number that was higher than that 1% reduction. So there is a big trigger for Congress to finish its appropriations work before January 1st. Okay. It's possible that there is a government shutdown or a few small shutdowns between October 1st and January 1st. It'll be hard. And
that all that does, I mean,
it's going to take a lot of work.
As interesting as that is to all us policy wonks, that the reason it's important on this call is that's what gums up things like what we're trying to do, because they're busy doing other stuff. So
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the process that Speaker McCarthy is using is to pass 12 individual pieces of legislation, and then negotiate with them with the Senate, and then pass 12 individual pieces of legislation again. The debt ceiling bill was one bill, and it took them a month and a half to get that figured out. Now they're going to have to go through more or less the same negotiation process 12 more times and do it in, between now and October 1st.
Right.
Or January 1st,
Correct.
probably January 1st.
So we see a timeline. I mean, we've got some work to do now, September for October 1st. And, we've got targets we've got to hit on new sponsors. And then the conversation between the two, between the two different bills, comparison and whether or not we can get something put together and move forward. So that's great information. Does anybody have any questions for Brian? I saw Joel on earlier. I don't know if I see him now, but Joel was here.
Yeah, I'm on. Hello,
Hey,
everybody.
Joel, how are you?
I will just say, at 280 plus co-sponsors, this bill should be on the floor and would be on the floor with 10 minutes of debate on both sides and pass with a 15-minute vote. But the leadership is not there yet. But which is why we need to keep up the pressure. This is broadly popular, broadly bipartisan, and really significant policy for the people who are impacted by it. It should be an easy vote.
Hey, Brian and Evan, just a real quick question, and it would be with Neil's bill. Is there a HR number to that, or is it just
4260.
4260? Or so is 4260? Is that something we should be, even though Maryland has 6 of 8 co-sponsors already? Is there something we should be going back and saying, hey, look, we need to be looking at 4260? Is there something we need to be doing to not play them against each other to support HR 82?
Yeah, that's a great question, Phil. I mean, do we look for co-sponsors for 4260? Do we just stay hitched to 82? Does it matter? Is it
right? Good. Well, and my question is, because you were talking about WEP and GPO, HR 82 is a WEP GPO bill, where 4260 is the one where it's only WEP. And so, you're looking at one segment. And so is it better to support one segment and try to pass that at this point in time and then go after the remaining portion later on? Am I not going down the wrong path?
Phil, it's a really good question. I think from our perspective, advising Edmund and the board, all of it is an improvement over the status quo. We should push for both. I think the reality is a compromise needs to be made to resolve this policy question, and the more pressure there is for members of Congress to do that, because there is so much overwhelming support for these bills and for acting on these bills, the better chance we have. So we want as much support. Members should support. When I speak to members of Congress, I say, support this bill and support this bill. We want to see your support on both. If you support us on this issue, we want to see your support on both.
Right. Okay.
And if there's, and we said the same thing last year when there were 3 versions of the bill. Yeah, if you support us on one, there's no reason you shouldn't support all of them from our perspective.
Okay.
They have their own political reasons for doing one or the other or the third, but from our perspective, they should be on all of them.
Right. And that's on the House side. What's the Senate looking like on this?
So
sorry,
Chairman
Wyden,
Chairman Wyden is a supporter of the Senate companion to HR 82. Chairman Wyden is the Senate Finance Committee. But because of the rules of the Constitution, because this is a revenue bill, The Senate can't act on it first. They can only act if the House acts first.
Afterward. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's the process that the Constitution dictates.
So is
Thank
there,
you.
so is there a companion bill or,
Only to HR 82.
so S 597 is the only web GPO
Yeah.
thing that's in, okay. And we'll keep an eye on that too, for information. So great question, Phil. Is there anybody else have any other questions before we move on here? All right, good deal. Mr. Dowd, do you want to talk a little bit about, I mean, we've had a great summer with the chapter conventions, supported PAC, you know, over and above. We had a better attendance this year for chapter conventions and better PAC activities, but do you want to pump everybody up? Do you need a final push to complete the roster for the table? How's the PAC preparations going for Denver?
Yeah, we've had a great spring. The communication, I've had a lot of communication with the state PAC chairs. We've raised, it hasn't changed a lot since last month because there weren't a lot of conventions, but
Right.
it's over 1,000 so far this year, which is pretty
Awesome.
fantastic. But I do have a lot of blank spaces for hour-long volunteer opportunities at the PAC table for national conventions. So I sent out that calendar, that schedule to all the presidents of PAC chairs just a couple hours ago.
Okay,
I've already gotten some replies. So
excellent. And that's what'll happen. People come sign up on Sunday and Saturday
Right.
night, Sunday too. So
Right.
all right.
But yeah, nothing earth shattering, Edmund. Just
Good,
same as last month. Yeah.
Okay. And you know, and that's how it rolls. It's peaks and valleys. And now we'll all get together and have a great time in Denver. Just while we're on the subject of Denver, I'm going to give this PSA for you know, remember that the Sunday night now is the more formal of the two banquets. So Thursday is going to be a little less formal. It's going to be casino night, Western themed casino night. What we discovered over the years, for the last few years especially, a lot of people get that 6 o'clock a.m. Friday morning flight out of town, and so they're not interested in staying too late at the banquet on Thursday night. So we've lightened that up a little bit. And so Sunday night will be an awards banquet. We will do a lot of awards, and obviously we'll be making a big fuss of Jerry Swarm as it's her last convention. You know, so that'll be, you know, so you don't want to miss that. You know, and then the convention, the format's going to be very similar to previous years. The PAC table will be there. We'll flip a coin at least once, I'm sure. Mr. DeJoy is confirmed for Monday. He'll close out the session on Monday. Doug Tolino on Wednesday and Dr. Josh Cullen on Thursday are the main event speakers. But there's going to be a PAC and legislative class on Sunday, you know, covering a lot of these same topics, hopefully. You know, we'll have some movement by then. There'll be some new stuff. The guys will be there. We'll do all the PAC medallion stuff that we not that we normally do because we're moving some stuff around, but there'll be a lot of the PAC medallion recognition. And then you obviously the classes, all the leadership classes on Sunday, so the PAC will be included there. So that room will be full with Jim Dunlap and John Dowds and Brian, Chris, and Joel. So Brian and Chris and Joel, I'm trying to carve out enough time. We have some dignitaries speaking. There's Congress people speaking. We're gonna have some videos from other supporters there, but I'm going to try and make sure I don't shorten up their time on Monday too much, like happened last year. So with that, we just about hit the 9 o'clock mark here. Is there anything else that anybody needs? Any last minute questions that came up or anything that we can cover before we see each other, everybody next month? All right, guys, good call. Thanks for your attention. Appreciate all the hard work. And I will see everybody. Next time I see you, we'll be I'll be in the Mountain Time Zone, right?
Yep. Have a great night.
All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you
Thank
soon.
you.
Good night, everyone.